about to show you how you can take your quilting game to the next level. I'm going to show you 5 free motion quilting techniques that you can use on your next beach-themed quilt. I was just at a quilt show recently and I had a number of my quilters whose quilts I have quilted come to me. It was a judged quilt show, and they said that one of the aspects that the judges was looking for was how well the pattern and style of your quilting and your stitching matched the actual quilt overall design. I know many quilters struggle with finding thematic quilting styles, especially with very specific thematic quilts. But today I'm going to share with you 5 techniques that I used on this quilt so that you can incorporate them into your own beach-themed quilts. So today I'm going to be in the quilting studio and I'm going to walk you through how to quilt up this beach pattern panel. Now this is a panel that I designed. This was the original watercolor painting. I digitized it, brightened up the colors a little bit. This was from one of my vacations in Hawaii, and now I have it in fabric form. You can find this panel on Spoonflower. I'm going to link it in the description below. So if you also want a summery, beachy, tropical quilt panel to quilt on, you can find this right on Spoonflower. I will link it in the description below. Quilt panels like this one are best quilted with a thematic style because basically we are just accentuating what's already there in the picture, in the artwork. So we want that to really pop and come to life, which is why today I'm going to show you how to take each section of this quilt and really bring it to another level and to enhance the qualities that are already there in the panel. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I'm going to show you my 5 techniques, starting with how to stitch up ocean waves. So to start with the ocean waves, we are just going to be oscillating back and forth with gentle curves. These gentle curves are going to mimic how the ocean flows and moves. And occasionally we're going to throw in a cap or a larger sea to kind of look like the ocean waves are capping or rolling across the water. So you're just going to gently oscillate back and forth, up and down, and occasionally throw in a C curve and then curve back out in order to create little wave caps along your sea line. You're going to work back and forth wherever you see water in the panel, just slowly working your way across the panel and moving freely. If you get stuck or get caught somewhere, you can always stop, anchor your stitches, put a little knot, and we can tie it in later, and you can start and pick up where your waves continue later on. Next, let's talk about palm trees. I actually stitched these palm trees in 2 parts. I stitched the trunks of all of the palm trees first, and then I added in the leafy tops. To start with the palm trunks, I worked from the top of the palm tree to the bottom. So you're going to stack these tiny little rectangles on top of each other all the way down the trunk of the tree. These little rectangles are going to be slightly narrower at the top, slightly wider at the bottom. The next one again is going to start slightly narrower than the one on top of it and then get a little bit wider. And we're just going to stack these all the way down the trunk of the palm tree. The rectangles will also get a little bit bigger as you progress down the trunk of the tree. This gives us that classic palm tree look. And don't get caught up if your little rectangles aren't perfect. They don't need to be. Palm trees trunks in nature aren't perfect. Go look at the trees outside your window. They are not perfect. They're going to be a little bit irregular, and it's okay for quilting is a little bit irregular too. You're going to want to try to backtrack on the same lines along your rectangles if you can, but if you miss, again, it's going to be okay. Maybe it's just an extra little palm boot that's hanging down. We can pretend. It's okay. This is your quilt. We can make it whatever you want it to be. Next, once we're all done with all of the palm trunks, we're going to add the palm tree leaves to the tops of our trees. So to get started, you're going to start at the center of where all of the palm tree leaves congregate. So start right in the center, and you're going to create a C curve along the top of one of the leaves. Next, you're going to kind of create a serrated edge by just cutting your sewing machine in and out gently along the bottom of the leaf, kind of creating those little sub-leaves that are so classic to see on palm trees. So you're just going to jet in and out slowly, and make your way back to the center of all of the palm leaves. Adding these little serrations to the bottom side of the leaf is going to be a little bit like loose feathering, very casual feathering. It doesn't need to be like a true feather, although if you love feathers, that could be also another technique. You can create the outer curve and then feather your way back to the center of the palm tree. Personally, I like more organic, angular sort of movements for something like this, especially with the style of how this was painted. So I'm making more angular leaves, but work with a style that you love and that you're going to enjoy. If feathers that are curved and smooth are your thing, I say go for it. Next, let's talk about the clouds. Creating this cloud section was a little bit tricky because we have a lot of palm trees that kind of work our way up into the sky, and we have some sky below the clouds as well. So I used a couple techniques and actually a couple of days to get this cloud technique really working. This technique can be used with a ruler or without. It's going to become a little bit cleaner cut and a little bit more formal if you use a ruler. Personally, I did use a ruler just to try to keep my edges nice and clean. If you free motion your clouds and you don't use a ruler, they're going to look a little bit more natural and a little bit more loose, which I think is also a good technique. You're basically going to use that C curve again, and you're going to create little adjoining C curves along the top side of your cloud, until you have an oval shape to create your cloud. I generally used some of the white that was in the sky of this panel already to kind of dictate where my clouds were going to be. That kind of helped give me an idea of where my cloud placement was going to be, so I worked with the colors that were already in the panel. For extra definition, I echoed each of these clouds, which means I took my ruler and I went about 1/4 of an inch away from my initial cloud outline and I reinforced it. Now, the reason why I did this is because if you wind up adding any additional free motion quilting into the sky, then you still want your cloud definition to be there. So I just wanted to make sure that they popped out, that we could really see their definition, especially with so much going on in this panel. I wanted to make sure that we knew exactly where the clouds were, and using an extra echo stitching line around the outside edge of the clouds is going to help you give just a little bit extra definition. Now, I waited a few days and I wanted to see what this final panel was going to look like, but we decided that the sky was a little bit empty, so we needed to add some more. So I wound up actually just doing a free motion swirl pattern in the skyline. And this is a pretty simple technique. You're just going to kind of swirl in, echo swirl out, and then just add C curves to move to your next swirl. And to fill in little spaces between the clouds and the swirls. I also outlined each of the birds that was in this panel. There are little seagulls flying in the sky. I made sure that we outlined those as well to make sure that they popped out of the sky, since they're flying through it and they're part of our story and our picture as well. You can stick with just simply adding in a few clouds, or if you want to have a more dense quilting style, and in this case we did because the rest of the quilt is filled in so densely, we added in some swirls and C curves, or I added in some swirls and C curves throughout the sky between the clouds. Next, let's tackle the cabana along the beach. So everyone loves a good beach house, and this panel is no different. We have 2 beach houses that we need to fill in. I did use ruler work for this, but again, if you want to free motion your lines, that's okay too. It's going to give it that more natural, organic look. It's totally up to you. For these panels, I added siding, so simple horizontal curves right along the side of the house, and we added roof lines. You want your roof lines to kind of match the outside roof of the house, and we're going to kind of angle them in slightly until you get to the center of the roof, and then you're going to start angling them back out toward the other side of the roof. And you're going to give that roof some extra dimension. And of course, what's a beach panel without a beach? We need to talk about the rocky beachline coast and sandy beach aspects of this quilt panel. We're going to fill those in next. If your beach is rocky, whether you're using this panel or another one, I'm going to recommend that you use a pebble technique to fill in the rocks on your beach. However, if you have a rocky shoreline, the rocks are often not circular, they're often flattened and smooth because they've been smoothed by water. In this case, you're going to take ovals and a little bit more natural shapes, and you're going to create a rocky shoreline. You're going to kind of use what's in your panel already to kind of see where you think the outside edge of the rock would be. It doesn't need to be perfect. It does not need to be a perfect oval. And a lot of the ones that I used are not going to be perfect ovals. So wherever you think these rocks are going to be, you're going to kind of outline that shape with your sewing machine. And then you are going to move along that line until you're ready to create your next rock. And you're going to create a chain of rocks edge to edge all along your beach until you've filled in all of the rocky spaces. So you're going to backtrack along your work, along the line that you used to create your rock, and then you're going to move along and start stitching out the next rock. And you can, again, backtrack along that rock until you're ready to create the next rock in your rock chain along the beach. Now, in this particular beach, the rocks are going to start transitioning into sandy beach. So as that's happening, we're going to use gentle oscillating curves to mimic the smooth mounds of sand. We want to follow the horizon line, so we want to go left to right because the land is running horizontal. Land does not generally run vertical unless you have a cliff. So because the beach is horizontal, we want our smooth oscillating curves to run left to right along the beach. We're gonna gently oscillate them along the shoreline. And again, I'm using gentle curves, and we're gonna kind of ease them into each other so they kind of oscillate back and forth, almost brick style. So they're not lined up perfectly. We're gonna slowly work our way down the beach, but we're gonna kind of shift back and forth so that our curves are at different lengths and different widths, and it's going to look natural and a little bit more organic. And there you have it. We have our finished Paradise panel. I'm so excited about this quilt. Thematic quilting styles will really take your work to the next level. It's just going to take your pattern that you're trying, the story that you're trying to tell with your fabric, and take it up a notch. If we were to just do, say, a loopy design over this entire quilt, it's not going to add anything to this fabric panel. It's going to be structurally sound as a quilt goes, but it's not going to add anything to the story. Whereas by stitching out palm trees, cabanas, ocean waves, we're really trying to draw on the story and give our viewers something to look at that's going to be extra special. So don't forget to comment below the favorite technique that you saw today that you might be able to incorporate into your next tropical panel. And be sure to hit that subscribe button for even more quilting tips, tutorials, embroidery tips, tutorials, and small business vlogs. That's what I'm here for. I'm so glad you were here to join me today. Thank you so much again. And be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, because it'll help other quilters and viewers find content that they will enjoy as well. Until next time, friends, happy stitching.